Because let me tell you what the purpose of the Libertarian Party is. It isn't to support Republicans. Well, hello everyone. I meant to change out that little short clip at the beginning because this has nothing to do with politics. I mean, it does in a way, but it certainly doesn't have anything to do with the Libertarian Party. But why not? I don't think it can be said enough that the purpose of the Libertarian Party is not to support Republicans. And you linos who are in the LP, and I can say this now because I'm a free agent, go back to your home in the GOP. Anyway, I appreciate it. And Adam, I see you in comments. Watching on X is awesome. It does help my metrics though on YouTube if you want to open another tab and just have it play there as well. Let me do a brief intro. I did get a new patron today, which I really, really appreciate. So if you enjoy the work that I do, which is getting pretty varied lately, of course, you can follow me on Twitter at Karen Ann Harlos, or you can support me, and this is very important, on Patreon at patreon.com/Pink Flame of Liberty. I did get a new patron today who wanted to see one of the bonus, I don't know if you'll call it a bonus episode, but it was like the after show talk when I do interviews. So it was the after talk that I did with Jake Porter regarding Hector Roos's series he's going to do about trying to pillage the Libertarian Party, at least in my opinion, allegedly. Okay. And something else I also like to do in the beginning, because somehow this has always turned into a quasi-fashion show. I've got another Wish.com shirt. Wish has great shirts. So I've got my Don't Be a Salty Bitch. Another of my favorites. But today, what are we talking about? So today, I just saw my camera do that weird autofocus. And I don't have the Libertarian Party of Louisiana cup, but I do have my Anarchon cup. So it's some libertarian related cup. Today we are talking about the new Alex Jones, Candace Owens. I gotta get centered in the camera. It drives me crazy. The Candace Owens and the lawsuit that was filed against her by Emmanuel and Brigitte Macron. So by the, is he called the premier? I don't even know what the leader of France and his wife. I would guess that most of my audience is at least somewhat familiar with Candace Owens. They might not be greatly familiar because libertarian circles aren't exactly the same. Candace, okay, when Candace was with Daily Wire, I was not a fan in general, though I always did admire her spunk. She's very spunky. She doesn't back down, though I think that's going to be her undoing here. I mean, that can be both a strength and a weakness. But I never liked her holier than thou, like prudish, preachy like way. But she kind of changed after she got fired from Daily Wire. And see, I don't like the way this isn't centered. This is driving me crazy. Hold on. I gotta see if I can fix this a little bit. Is that better? Yes, that's better. Okay, now my OCD's not going crazy. Anyway, so she got in some ways better when she went on her own. You could tell that she felt certainly freer, but she went off. Like, I enjoy a good conspiracy theory like anyone else, but she's gone way off. I mean, even whether it was jokingly or not, which it might have been, hinting, that she's seriously considering flat Earth because everything, is a satanic conspiracy to undermine faith in Christ. And as you know, guys know, I'm a Christian, but everything's not a satanic conspiracy to undermine faith in Christ. So she kind of started off, I'm not going to say it was the first thing she did, but like the first really big splash she did is a series on Emmanuel and Brigitte Macron. I hope you guys are familiar with it. Otherwise, the show might be a bit hard to follow. Because there's a lot of different accusations she made under the guise of investigative journalism. And some of them, like, she dropped without a word and then went down an entirely different rabbit trail. And to be honest with you, I can't even follow, and I watched her series twice, all of the different rabbit trails. But let me just throw out some of the accusations, which we'll get into here. That Brigitte Macron is a pedophile. That's the accusation. I'm not saying that. Don't sue me. I'm just relating a story here that the family is somehow involved or has close ties to a satanic pedophile ring that has something to do with the Rockefellers and MK Ultra. Yeah, it is starting to sound a bit crazy. And that Brigitte was born a biological male and may in fact be Emmanuel's biological father, and what the hell happened to the real Brigitte Macron, and that these pictures are altered and there's stolen identity. And I mean, if you were to just like type into AI, just put those names in there and go, write an outrageous fanfic conspiracy, I'm not so sure AI would output something more like outrageous. Now, I'm not doing an argument from incredulity, saying just because it's outrageous doesn't mean it's not true. I don't believe it's not true because of the evidence, though also part of your determination in not believing or believing something is, of course, credulity or incredulity. So DR, like, kind of, somebody in comments, caught right as I was saying that. Is it impossible? No, it's not impossible. With the evidence that is out there, I do not believe it for a second. So when I first hear, I've got the complaint right here. So what I do on the show, as you know, is I get into minutia that like the quartering or the 10 or 15 minute shows aren't going to give you. This is going to be a long show. This is for people who are interested in the minutia. This is for people who are interested in someone who has actually read the complaint. Now, let me get this disclaimer up front. I'm not an attorney. So do not take anything I say like as attorney, whatever, like practicing law or anything like that. I am a paralegal, so I have experience with the legal system, probably understand some legal concepts better than the average bear, but I am not a licensed attorney. And I also am not a paralegal in Delaware, where I should have had my little Wayne's World clip. We're in Delaware. Hookachakachia. Yeah. Anyway, those of you who got that reference, you're old like me. But again, I know a little bit about the law and did a little bit of research into Delaware defamation. So we're going to get started now. We're going to get right into it. And yes, people, please put your questions up. I love the interaction. And to flip this over, to start off. So this is filed in Delaware. Now, why is it filed in Delaware? Anyone who knows anything about Candace knows she lives in Tennessee. So you're wondering what kind of jurisdiction there would be in Delaware. Now, first, let me answer what somebody like so confidently said. And I have learned, and if you're that guy and you're watching the show, I'm sorry, I'm not giving your name or anything like that. But what I found, at least on Twitter, is the more confidently somebody says something, the less they know about the topic. Because some of the strident, confident, comments that were made, and I'm like, well, yeah, just screw me. I'm just a paralegal, knows nothing. And like, oh, argument from authority. Well, I mean, it's like if you were not. Let me give an example of someone who's not actually, like, since I'm not an attorney, like say someone was an electrician journeyman. They're not yet a full-blown electrician, but they know a thing or two about voltage. And if I come in, my dumb ass don't know a thing about that, trying to tell the journeyman something. No, it's not a argument from authority for the journeyman to say, you don't know what you're talking about. And hello, Wheat. I appreciate your comment. So let me then, that was a prelude. So somebody said, how in the world can somebody from overseas have jurisdiction over an American citizen? And I just wanted to give the side eye and go, do you not realize that foreign corporations and American corporations, which in America corporations are considered legal people, are in court all the time, particularly over things like trademark, which I know a tiny bit about. I've done some work in trademark law, professional work, not just volunteer work, which people know about with the Libertarian Party. And it's like, of course you can sue in American courts if the alleged offense took place on American soil. I guess these are the same sorts of people who think that undocumented immigrants don't have rights. Like the Constitution doesn't apply to them because they're not citizens. And that's not the way it works. That's not the way any of this works. But Candace does not live in Tennessee, so it's a good question going, why Delaware? Well, Candace isn't the only one sued. It's Emmanuel Macron and Brigitte Macron. And by the way, you can look up this case yourself, too. It seems that Delaware does have a docket, or you can at least see the docket. And this complaint has been posted in a million different places. When she files her response, she said on the Piers Morgan show, she has no intention of doing a motion to dismiss. And I don't know whether that's moxie or stupidity. If you're worth $200 million, and you got a 219-page complaint against you alleging like a lot of freaky stuff, I don't know, Candace, you should probably try to get this dismissed. I'm not saying you would be successful, but as the saying goes, do you feel lucky? Okay. You know, she's either really brave or a barking moonbat. And sometimes the difference between those two is a little hard to define. And there is a jury trial demand, which is important. So this isn't going to be tried before a judge if it goes to trial. It's going to be tried before a jury. So I do think there would probably, well, let's get back to a jury trial demand in a second. So Candace Owens is sued. Candace Owens LLC, which obviously is her LLC, and that LLC is formed in Delaware, which is just funny with the Libertarian Party connection here. I don't think it was filed by Austin Padgett. Bonus points if you got that joke. And also George Tom Inc., which is filed in Delaware. So because two of the defendants are Delaware quote-unquote citizens, there is jurisdiction in Delaware. They didn't make an alter ego argument that these two corporations are the legal alter egos of Candace Owens, though they probably could have made that argument. Now I'm going to say something I'm ignorant of, because I don't work in defamation law. We could talk as a libertarian. I'm a libertarian, for those of you who don't know, about whether or not there in Libertopia there would even be such a thing as defamation law. I know the knee-jerk reaction of libertarians is no, there shouldn't be, and maybe this is going to be a libertarian heresy of mine. I'm not so sure I believe that. I think in some cases it elevates to a case of fraud. No, you don't own other people's thoughts about you. But in a society where you don't have the government, we like to really scream dystopia, and I would too, with a government enforced one about quote unquote social credit scores. Yes, I don't want a government social credit score, but in like a libertarian anarchy, your reputation is what seals the deal on a lot of things. So there's almost like an informal social credit score, but it's what other people think about you. And if someone has really gone over the line to say like you diddle kids or something like that, I'm not so sure. Like, I don't know that. I haven't worked this all out in my head. I know Walter Block would be going like this to me, but still. Anyway, we're going to deal with the world we have now, not necessarily the world we might wish exist. Defamation, and if you notice, I'm not saying libel or slander because she's done both. She's libeled them, she's said things in print, if it's true. She's committed potential libel against them on Twitter, and she's done her show, which would be slander, which fall under the broad category of defamation, which includes both written and spoken. Okay, so the jury trial demand, why does this become important now? And I guess I better speed up or this is going to be a really long show, but you guys are used to that. The plaintiffs may have decided that they would get a better jury in Delaware than they would in Tennessee. Delaware is much more liberal, so that could be why. I know that's what Candace is saying, and she might be right. As plaintiffs, that is always a tactical consideration. And as I don't work in defamation law, and the time I've dealt with removals, if you don't know what removal is sometimes you might decide as a defendant that you would do better in federal court than you would do in state court. I don't know about removal actions to federal court. And you can remove an action if it involves an issue of constitutional law, a dispute between states, but where this might qualify for removal, and I'm not sure, go ask an attorney about this, I'm really speculating, is based upon what's called diversity of citizenship. So I could tell you where I used to be very involved in removals. I used to work in insurance defense. And the insurance companies, I used to work for the insurance companies. Well, not for them directly, but for an attorney that worked for them. And in a lot of the insurance cases, the insurance company was incorporated very often in Delaware or somewhere out of state. And this is when I was in Florida. And the plaintiff was a Florida resident. And the amount in controversy was over, they raised it. At the time, I think it was $50,000, but I think it's $75,000 now. But it's over a certain dollar amount. So if the parties are from different states and out of country, I think would qualify. And the amount in controversy is over, I think, $75,000. In certain circumstances, you can remove the action to federal court. And the thinking is, no offense on any state court judges, the thinking is that federal court judges are better and that federal juries are better. So we'll see if she tries to remove this to federal court. It might not qualify. It's just something that came up to me. Okay. So I'm assuming you guys know, a bit about what's going on. So I could tell you when I first read this complaint, I posted on X and said, I think Candace Owens is in big trouble. Now, crap, there's more introductory that needs to be done. So defamation cases, when you're a public figure, and certainly the leaders of France are a public figure, you have a higher standard of proof than So for instance, I'll just use myself. Why not now? I'm a public figure. People say bad crap about me all the time. If I were to sue them for defamation, you can't just prove that the statement was it. I'm trying to think of how to explain this well. There has to be actual malice. It can't just be that the statement was defamatory. It has to be defamatory with willful negligence or actual malice. And legal actual malice doesn't mean hatred. It's just a heightened form of willfulness that you knew it wasn't true, or really a reasonable person wouldn't know it to be true. And in Delaware also, it can't only be that it's defamatory. It is that, like, if Candace kept saying that the Macrons were shape-shifting lizards, the average person's not going to believe that. It has to be, or even necessarily understand it as defamatory. That probably wasn't a good example. Like if for some reason that Candace just really hated broccoli and just said over and over again that the Macrons, were secret broccoli evangelists, the average person isn't going to consider that to be defamatory. So it's got to be things that the reasonable person would consider to be defamatory. And then there is something called defamation per se. Now, in defamation per se, you don't have to prove actual damages. So things that are defamation per se, I didn't look up the elements of it in Delaware. I do know the elements of it in Colorado, and it's a bit old-fashioned. Defamation per se, and I'm sure it's very similar in each of the states, is when you accuse somebody of a crime, which Candace does do in her accusations against the Macrons. If you impugn the chastity of a woman, or you accuse somebody of having a loathsome, I think the way the statute goes, disease, but some kind of disease. They certainly meet defamation per se under the accusation of a crime. Now, with the public figure standard, again, there's the heightened level, but what also becomes interesting is whether or not Candace is considered a media person. And I would consider Candace a media person. I consider new media. And I don't necessarily agree with this, but I understand why. And this is going to become important later. Normally in a defamation case, if you're the defendant, truth is an absolute defense to defamation. And the burden is upon you if you want to use that as a defense to prove that your statements are true. However, if you're a defendant that's a media figure, the burden of proof can be shifted because they don't want to stay. They're trying to balance the First Amendment with the freedom of the press to have the full pursuit of truth. So if Candace is a media figure here, she doesn't have to prove the truthfulness. The Macrons will have to prove the falsity. So this can get interesting. Some of the arguments I anticipate that will be made in this case, and this was also brought up by Legal Eagle, which is another show, and he is an attorney, is it seems like, and he pointed out specific sections of the complaint, and I agree, it seems like the Macrons are trying to set it up to claim that Candace is not a media figure, so the burden of proof will not be shifted. I will not agree with them there. Alrighty. So they're claiming, and this is actually true. Now, this is going towards the actual malice standard. It says that she went forward with her series basically in retaliation against the Macrons for the audacity of sending her a retraction demand. And that would be the 8-part series Becoming Brigitte and all of the Twitter posts that she did about that. Now, this summarizes what they're claiming is the defamation. that these were outlandish, defamatory, and far-fetched fictions, and I agree on each of those counts. Included, God, down here the dust just gets me. I'm in the basement, by the way. There's a libertarian joke lurking in there. So these outlandish and defamatory and far-fetched fictions included that Mrs. Macron was born a man, stole another person's identity, and transitioned to become Brigitte, that Mrs. Macron and President Macron are blood relatives committing incest, that President Macron was chosen to be the president of France as part of the CIA operated MK Ultra program or a similar mind control program, and Mrs. Macron and President Macron are committing forgery, fraud, and abuses of power to conceal these secrets. That's a good summary, but I would add there's more that they add in later that I'm surprised they didn't put on here. And here is where I think they're trying to set it up that she's not a legitimate media figure because she's not in the pursuit of truth. So they say that she's built a brand on provocation, not truth. Her content, it says her content is not intended to inform, but to inflame and attract attention through sensationalism and conspiracy theories. So I agree with Legal Eagle. This is repeated throughout here. These aren't the paragraphs he pointed to, but it's the same substance that they're trying to claim that she's not really a media figure. Now, it says that Ms. Macron had won French defamation claims against others who pushed these same baseless theories, underscoring both their falsity and defamatory sting. Owens knew this, yet Owens, fully aware of the truth, has not only declined to retract her statement, but actively expanded upon them. Now, I think it's these cases in France that ended up getting overturned, but it wasn't on the merits, but it was on procedural issues, if I remember correctly. Oh, let me give you another reason why they might have filed this in Delaware. Most states that I've looked at, their defamation statute of limitations is 1 year. It's 1 year in Colorado. It's 2 years in Delaware. So they could go back to things that she even said at the Daily Wire. Now, this statement I agree with. It says the result is relentless bullying on a worldwide scale. And I absolutely agree with that. This was relentless bullying. Even if you happen to believe some of it, that doesn't make bullying right. And perhaps I am somewhat sympathetic to this because on a much, much smaller scale, I have been the subject of national controversy, and some of it even did go international with some of the correspondences that I got. And I'm sorry, the human brain is just not equipped to that. Our monkey brains are not equipped to be the center of such mass attention. That's why some people, when all of a sudden they find themselves in the middle of a Twitter controversy, right, wrong, or indifferent. Like there's this article I saw today where this gal had given an interview talking about how because of AI and outsourcing and all of this, that the floor has dropped out of the tech industry. And she's like, I spent so much and student loans and all that other thing. And now I can't even get a job at Chipotle. So this was someone who didn't get a degree in basket weaving, went into programming and stuff like that. But because she's of Indian ancestry, but was born here, just the nasty racist comments and things that were made, that she protected her Twitter feed. And oh, she must have been a bad student, or she must have something to hide. No, it's just that you're not prepared for the onslaught of just awful, awful behavior. So yes, Candace, true, untrue, whatever, this was relentless bullying on a worldwide scale. The flip side of that would be, if you're running to be president of a country, you should kind of expect that. And if you're the spouse of that person, you know, you're going to get some of that too. But you want to know who didn't expect it and who shouldn't have to deal with that is the family. Brigitte, whether or not you believe she gave birth to them, which I do, has 3 children, and their names coming up and up and up, and they don't deserve that. And Brigitte's brother, who Candace thinks is Brigitte, Jean Michel, doesn't deserve that. And they're digging up all kinds of family, you know, including, oh God, it's just, it's sick. I'm sorry, just because you can do something doesn't mean you should do something. And Candace says, well, but I said I wouldn't do this series if they would just give me all this private information. I don't know. That's such a sense of entitlement, but they're claiming in this complaint that they did. And they're reiterating what they said to her. Now, I know some people could think there's wiggle room here. And believe me, I get the wiggle room thing. The embezzling former chair of the Libertarian Party, it's what she didn't say that was more important than what she said. But right here it says, Brigitte Macron, a French citizen, blah, 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 says, and a woman. Now I know all the Matt Walsh fans are screeching, what is a woman? Later on, they do claim she was born a woman. Now, some people might go, oh, there's still wiggle room in there. We want it to say that she's got whatever chromosomes. Okay, courts aren't going to play games like that. This is not a Mickey Mouse law firm. So they say in here she was born a woman. Okay, so these first pages have to do with identifying the people that are mentioned. And these things I didn't know. So, she mentions in her show Amadine Roy a few times. And 1 second here. Roy gets her a lot of her information. I didn't know this. She's a medium. She's a spiritual medium. Candace, I thought everything was some kind of satanic plot to overthrow belief in Christ, and you now are considering a medium a credible source? That's interesting. That never came up in any of Candace's show. And I'll tell you, this is just how I know these are just like in deep attorneys. They're like justifying their jurisdiction in Delaware. And they said exercising jurisdiction over defendant Candace Owens, LLC, would not offend traditional notions of fair play and substantial justice because it could have and should have reasonably foreseen being hailed into court. I was like, I haven't seen the expression hailed into court since paralegal school. Okay. And then again, they say it right here on April 13th, 1953, in France, in Amiens, I'm going to get all the French names wrong. I'm just telling you that right now, so don't be offended. In Amiens, France, Mrs. Macron was born Brigitte Trogneau, a woman. They outright say it. And they give a picture of her birth announcement. But here's the thing. I don't think, well, Candace doesn't deny that there was a girl born Brigitte Trogneau. She just denies that the person claiming to be married named Macron, but Brigitte Macron is that child, but never does answer what happened, which raises all other kinds of questions. Is there some kind of fraud being committed between a still living Brigitte and allegedly her brother in swapping identities? Are they claiming that MK Ultra, now she doesn't say this, but like these are the things that should pop into your head. Did MK Ultra and the Rothschilds murder the real Brigitte so that they could brainwash Jean Michel, who later would then marry the Manchurian candidate Emmanuel Macron? Do you see how nuts all of this crap is? The strongest element of proof that they have is a young picture of Jean Michel put side by side with a current picture of Brigitte, and super strong resemblance. Huh. That's odd, isn't it? No, they're brother and sister. Haven't you known families that are just like, oh my God, like you could tell just by looking at them that they're siblings. Shock and awe, a brother and sister have a strong resemblance. She even insinuates in one of the shows that one of the daughters has a different parent, one of her Brigitte's children, the daughter, whose name I can't remember, and I probably wouldn't say it anyway, because you don't need to be dragging those names of these other people in. But I think she has 2 sons and a daughter, and it says that the 2 sons strongly resemble the father, or Brigitte's ex-husband, but that the daughter strongly resembles Brigitte, somehow trying to claim that the other 2, or insinuate that the other 2 really weren't Brigitte's children, and that maybe the daughter is a different relative rather than a daughter. Now, can you imagine this happening to you? So before you all get caught up in the salacious details, or you don't like the politics of the French president, can we just be a little human about this? Now, is there some ick going on? Sure. And I think it's fair to bring up. Not continuously, but I do think it's fair to bring up. And we'll get into that. And to me, I have to be honest with you, I do not believe Brigitte was born male. But I also do not give a shit, honestly. What I think the real story here is, and if Candace had just stuck to this, is that she could say there is something morally wrong, even if it wasn't per se legally wrong, which it looks like it was, or potentially, and we'll get into that. I don't know French law, with the age difference between the 2. There's all kinds of 1-year discrepancies, so I don't know which one is right. Brigitte was either 39 or 40 when she first met Emmanuel, who was either 14 or 15. I can't make it. It might come up in here, heads or tails, out of which one is correct. The age of consent in France is 15. So if he was 15, it isn't, and they had some kind of relations, which I'm still not too sure of, which seems very certain, is that either a 14 or 15-year-old Emmanuel Macron fell in love with a cougar teacher of 39 to 40, and that's inappropriate even if nothing happened. Not inappropriate on his end. I mean, he's a child, but any awareness she had of it, or any encouragement she had of it, would have been extremely inappropriate. That's no bueno. And when his parents found out about it, they put him in a different school. So there's that other dynamic. She was a teacher. So here's the thing, when this attraction happened, and let's say some kind of sexual contact happened, there was no age of consent in France at that time. I forgot the year that was passed, but it has been since then. But there was a law about teachers or other people in positions of power taking advantage of that with, younger people. But that isn't the same crime, and it was a much lesser degree or whatever they have in France. But let's forget about the law. That's just nasty. That's nasty. Candace, I think, also legitimately brings up that some of their influences and literature that they like has strong, inappropriate, about young people themes. And yes, I think that is valid to bring up and is gross. To me, those are the real stories. Those are definitely eyebrow raising. It doesn't make Brigitte a man. It doesn't make her potentially Emmanuel's father. It doesn't make Emmanuel a Manchurian candidate who was basically a blank slate that was just filled with whatever plans the Rothschilds had because of MK Ultra. Lizard people would be more believable at this point. So there's the birth announcement for Brigitte, and Brigitte used to be married to, don't know the first name, but last name Azuer. God, I can't do these French names. Azuer. We're just going to pronounce it that way. And they're claiming that is not Brigitte in the picture. But in this lawsuit, they are claiming to the court that is, in fact, Brigitte in that picture. Okay. Now, they're saying during the time that Emmanuel, was below the age of majority, they say at all times the teacher-student relationship between Mrs. Macron and President Macron remained within the bounds of the law. So they're disclaiming any of that. But when President Macron's parents became aware of his strong feelings for his teacher, they decided to transfer him to, I'm never going to even try to pronounce it, another school. Mrs. Macron encouraged him to leave and was confident he would fall in love with a peer, that this was like puppy love. Yet before his departure, he told her, whatever you do, I will marry you. And they did eventually get married. So, all right. Now, just going on to some of Candace's claims. And here's a contradictory one. Actually, this isn't one of Candace's claims. This is just some of the fans of this conspiracy theories claims. It says users point to the fact that there are few public photos of Mrs. Macron from her youth, and that she often hides her neck as proof she is transgender. Now, Candace has gone on to say that Brigitte had facial feminization surgery, which would include shaving the Adam's apple. So the conspiracy theorists can't even keep their story straight. And let me tell you, this whole part of like the far right, the transvestigators, it used to just be when conservatives didn't agree with you that they would call you a liberal. Okay, and I'm not a liberal. I'm also not a conservative. I'm a libertarian. It doesn't fit in those boxes. As I say, it's completely orthogonal. But you want to know what I get all the time now? So there's some barking moonbat conservative decides they don't like me, and they go, "Well, you're just a trans anyway, aren't you?" Like my whole life, like I've never been accused of that. I'm not going to get up like I should have. Now, of course, I guess surgery can do that for you, but I should have it came instead of wearing my baggy t-shirt and whatever to show like I have a very feminine body, like, and I've got small hands. don't know what to tell you. I do have big feet, though. Not as big as my mother's, and she was a woman. She gave birth to me. But I got some hoofs. I will tell you that. But I've got petite features. I assure you, I was born a woman. But anyway, that just seems to be like the go-to now. Whenever they don't agree with you, they transvestigate you. And it's like, that's just weird. Like, do you realize just how mental that you've become? Okay. Oh, so it is talking about the defamation case in France that got overturned. And it gives a little procedural ground here. It says an interim appellate court overturned the judgment on July 10th, and the case is now on appeal to France's highest court. Importantly, the appellate court did not overturn the judgment on the basis that the statements were true, but on other grounds. So I think that is important to know. So there has not been a judgment on the merits. And here's something I learned. So Candace Owens' husband, if you didn't know, it's in the filing here, and they are public figures. He was a chairman of Turning Point UK because he's from Britain. I didn't know that. And he later became the CEO of Parler. If you remember, it was that alternative social media platform. I did not know that. I also didn't know that they were worth $200 million. And they go on to repeat that Candace kept repeating the claim that Brigitte Macron was born a man because she knew the shock value would increase her visibility. And I believe that that's absolutely true. Then it says, Owens claims she learned about this theory from a 2021 debunking story published by the Daily Mail. Now, this, I think, is being petty on the Macrons' part here, this next sentence. So, yeah, I'm giving you my opinion, even though I think they're right, but where I think they go off the rails in their complaint. Owens falsely claimed that the article was recent. You know, recent is in the eye of the beholder. I would think a 2021 article in 2024 was a recent article. To say she falsely claimed it's recent. People's conception of recent is way, way different. Despite it being published more than 3 years ago, I don't know. To me, anything under 5 years is recent. Likely to make it appear. Now they're really speculating on her motives, and they don't like when she did that. This paragraph should not have been included in the complaint. If I were a paralegal proofreading this, I would have flagged this for my attorney going, I'm not so sure you'd want to include this. Likely to make it appear that she just happened upon this story, rather than searching for a salacious conspiracy to increase viewership. We have no idea how she came upon it or whatever. Now, this last sentence I do agree with. Shockingly, Owens claimed there was no debunking whatever. The Daily Mail, well, you know, that could be an opinion, but the Daily Mail article was a debunking article. Like, that's what it was. Now, maybe she didn't believe the bunk was that the bunk was debunked, but that was the point. That was the point of the article. So here's the title of the article. The proof France's First Lady wasn't born a man. The true story of Brigitte Macron's controversial background is revealed as a wicked slur spread by the French far right to damage the election hopes of her husband. So at least it was an article that alleged to debunk it. And here's where, and I noticed Candace doing this, saying something and then you never hear it again. Owens could not keep her story straight. For example, on her March 21st, 2024 appearance on the syndicated radio show. And again, you got the 2-year statute of limitations, which is one reason why they did it in Delaware. She said the Macrons tried to sell to the press a fake photo, which got debunked, that was actually Jean Michael's daughter. She has never repeated this claim because it's demonstrably false. And she does that with a few things. Then it says on June 12th, she appeared on Piers Morgan Uncensored to push more defamatory claims. And it says, claims even Piers Morgan, known for his provocative style, dismissed as absurd. And then Candace likes to play there's people lurking around, every corner for her. So, seeking to drive traffic to her new venture and expand her claims, she opened her show entitled, So Is Brigitte Macron a Man? By warning that the Macrons were going to come for her life. I think she might have meant livelihood there, but we'll just take it for what it is. She then repeated the categorically false claim that the Macrons had deployed the Secret Service to intimidate and to detain journalists to hide the truth of Mrs. Macron's transition and identity theft. She linked these allegations to a broader, equally baseless conspiracy theory that the world is being run by a gang of satanic pedophiles masquerading as Jewish people. So we're going to get some anti-Semitism thrown in there. And this is one that I noticed that she did with the she believes the moon landing is faked conspiracy. So it says, projecting, Owens claimed that the Macrons were not behaving in ways one does when you're telling the truth. So I forget what astronaut it was. Was it Buzz Aldrin? Those astronauts have been harassed. Forget about whether or not you believe in the moon landing. We're just talking about human nature here. You have astronauts that have been harassed ever since that event happened or allegedly happened, with people hounding them about it. And apparently, a few years ago, one of the astronauts, with this one guy who's just known to be stalkerish over the issue, who did appear on Aunt Candace's show, turned around and punched him in the face. And Candace says, you don't behave that way if you're telling the truth. Yeah, you would if you, for decades, have been completely hounded in your private life. Yeah, telling the truth or not telling the truth. Getting finally sick and tired and over it and giving someone a pow right in the kisser, honeymoon's reference there, is a perfectly human response. Now, do I advocate violence? Absolutely not. But you cannot infer anything from that as to whether or not someone is telling the truth. So for her to go, well, it's almost like, why won't you just let the police in your house if you don't have anything to hide? Why won't you just obey the officer? That's crap. So for her to say as part of evidence, well, they're not acting like the way I think someone should act if this isn't true. She claimed there are no photos, and she keeps saying this, from the first 30 years of Mrs. Macron's life, but contradicted herself just moments later by admitting that photos of a young Mrs. Macron had been released. She just doesn't believe they're real. And now kind of what she's saying is she doesn't think there's enough of them. I could tell you that unless I rescued from, my parents were going through like this weird divorce. Like my late teenage years were just like a complete family mess. If I didn't rescue from the family home all of these old family albums, which easily could have just been trashed, I would have no photos from my childhood. None. Didn't mean I wasn't real, that I'm maturing, or that I'm a man. It says Owens went so far as to claim that the 2024 Olympic opening ceremony, a tribute to Greek mythology, was designed to honor Brigitte Macron because she's transgender. This claim is not only absurd, but it's self-defeating. And they're correct. Owens insists that Ms. Macron's biological sex is a state secret, which would make such an open tribute impossible. Because if it's a secret, you don't do a tribute to it. Like, use your brains, people. And then she says, the Macrons are part of a very small group of elite oligarchs who routinely practice homosexuality and pedophilia, believe in Baphomet, and worship a transgender deity. I don't care how conservative any of you might be in my audience. This shit sounds nuts, okay? It sounds nuts. And this offends me as a Christian. She bolstered this claim by reposting on, they say X, I refuse to use that. I still say Twitter, a takedown of the opening ceremony and Mrs. Macron by another provocative figure, Archbishop, can't pronounce it, who had just been excommunicated from the Catholic Church. Again, searching for the most controversial spin, she posted, Brigitte Macron is a transvestite, calling it a demonic state secret and falsely claiming that Mrs. Macron is a rapist. Owens used the conspicuous tag, Christ is King. And that really, really offends me. Like, you don't use that to peddle your salacious conspiracy claims. I'm sorry. That should be used in a reverent sense. And that's why people are like saying that saying Christ is King is some kind of far-right dog whistle. And as a non-far-right Christian, F you, man. Like, don't do that. That's like why Christ turned over the tables. Like, you don't use that for profit. Gross. And then Owen stated, Brigitte Macron was born Jean-Michel Trogneau. He lived as a man for about 30 years before transitioning to Brigitte while he lived as a man. Now he says he fathered 3 children. Again, Owens tagged Christ as King. That makes me really angry. I won't turn green like the Incredible Hulk, but you won't like me when I'm angry. Says the December retraction letter explicitly denied, she claims it didn't, each of Owens's claims and presented evidence that conclusively disproved them, including her birth announcement. Says defendants knew this information, but Owens admitted it from her series precisely because it contradicted the preconceived narrative she intended to tell. This omission was deliberate and evidence of actual malice. And I don't think I had seen these pictures on her series. I don't know whether you did. These are pictures that were given to her in response. And they are saying these are pictures of the young Brigitte. The December retraction letter reminded Owens that Mrs. Macron's marriage to Andre Louis Zazier and his existence were well documented and provided, that photo. There was a claim, because what's his name? His name is, hold on, Andre Louis. And then there's a Jean Louise. Like, all these French names, they're so similar. And they kept claiming that the man in this photo wasn't Andre, that it was actually his brother, and his first wife, Susan Spray. And there was a defamation case won against that. When Owens was confronted with this information, she changed her theory and concocted a new story and claimed it was a different woman named Brigitte Trogneau, and that Mrs. Macron refused to verify that that was her in the picture. And they claim that's a lie, that they did, in fact, confirm it was her in the picture. And then she goes on, there's some names. I don't really want to mention the names of other people, talking about the Andre's death being mysterious, and that he was a very private person and that his privacy must be respected. And Owens distorted these words and the family's request for privacy into a warning, a threat not to look any further, because she always makes things so dramatic. And it turns out that Jean Michel is in that same photo with Brigitte as adults. And this is the 2017 and 2022 investiture, like a inauguration of Emmanuel Macron. And at least they are saying, and I had never seen these pictures in Candace's series, that both Brigitte and Jean Michel are in these photos, because she makes it like Jean Michel is nowhere to be found. So this is all new information to me. This should have been all in her series. And they talk about, says the December retraction letter explicitly stated that Mrs. Macron is the biological mother of her 3 children, proving that she was born as a woman and has not engaged in identity theft. And of course, Candace still runs with that, and in fact says she will stake her entire career on this fact. Well, she may have to make good on that. And then it says, when Owens realized her claims about Ms. Macron's children, i.e., that she fathered her children with the fictitious Brigitte Proba Azier, could not possibly be true, she dropped them, offering no alternative explanation, just a gaping hole. She counted on her audience being too captivated or too unquestioning to notice the gap. And the reason is clear. Any theory that Ms. Macron is not the mother of her children recklessly disregards the striking resemblance between her and her daughters. Okay, the 3 children are girls. I know later on, and I don't know if it was after this lawsuit was filed, because I've been watching a lot of this content to prepare for the show, Candace at least now says that the youngest daughter does look like Brigitte. Well, this is public in the complaint, so while I don't like bringing these other people into it, they put it into the complaint. You need to look at this. This is her, I believe, with 2 of her daughters. And yeah, there's a striking resemblance. I don't know if you can see it there. Again, you can find this complaint online if you want to see it for yourself. Now, here is where I think the Macrons go a little bit off. It says, Owens claimed that the Macrons demanded that she not publicize the retraction letter. They kind of did demand that she not publicize it, but they're downplaying that, saying, in fact, the letter had only a heading stating it was not for publication or attribution, a far cry from the demand she claimed. No, methinks you doth protest too hard. When you get something from an attorney that says not for publication, that's, I don't know, if I got something like that, I would take it as a demand not to publish. I would ignore it too, like Owens did, but I think they're overplaying their hand here. Most troubling, Owens promised she would publicize the December retraction demand, but she never did. And the reason is clear. The 33-page December retraction demand conclusively debunked Owens' claims and exposed her lies. Now, I've had fans of Candace say on my Twitter that she, in fact, did publish that entire letter. I asked them for links. They haven't given it to me. I went to try to find it on her website. There are some members-only areas. I'm not giving her any money, but it's certainly not in any public area of her site, and I could not find it in a Google search. Should have asked, I hate AI, by the way, but I should have asked ChatGPT to try to find it for me, but I didn't because I freaking hate AI and no one sent it to me. So it obviously isn't something that was easy to find. Now, she did show portions of it on her show, but I'd never seen the entire 33-page letter. And then talks about how she tagged Tucker Carlson in order to get more publicity. It says she intentionally led her audience to believe that the Macrons refused to say whether Mrs. Macron was born a woman, and in fact, they claim that they did. I wish they had, maybe they did in the court. I'll have to check this. No, they don't mention any exhibits in this complaint. I wish they published as an exhibit that letter. And then it says the December retraction demand denied that the president was statutorily raped. Says Owens knew these statements were false when she made them, but the truth did not matter when there were followers to be gained. It says on January 13th, it was posted on Twitter that she was sharing her legal response to the Macrons, one that she had not yet sent to them. She promised to upload the entire response to her locals page. Forgot she had a locals page. If anyone has access to that, I'd love to know if she's published this. Yet again, she did not follow through. She's falsely implied that the Macrons were responsible for the death of a journalist investigating them. The authorities determined it was suicide. I don't know, but she did imply that. That is, in fact, the case. She repeatedly claims that the December retraction demand did not deny that Brigitte is trans or explicitly state that she was born a biological woman. And they say this is false. The December retraction demand explicitly stated that the Macrons were not concealing Mrs. Macron's biological sex and that she was born Brigitte Tragno, a woman. And then, of course, the fact that you have to even deny this is just crazy to me. It said, again, some of the claims that I read these in the beginning, so we don't need to read them again. So here's some quotes from Candace. And guys, by the way, you should know that there's a strange case of what happens to every journalist who tries to touch the story. First and foremost, Isabella Ferreira. I think I mentioned this on a past episode. People who began prodding into the story as an independent journalist happened upon some huge information pertaining to the relationship of Emmanuel Macron and Brigitte. And again, there is stuff there with that whole age gap thing. But then she was found dead. She was found dead, floating in a river. And her friend said she didn't kill herself, but the media said she most definitely did. There have been people who have been so concerned about like our safety and stuff. We did up on security for this after getting the letter from Macron. So she certainly is implying a connection and that her safety was in danger. Because of things that we know about their network and things that are happening to every journalist that has tried to get this out, we're taking it seriously. But no, at the end of the day, it's not in security's hands, it's in God's hands. So we ask everyone, whether you believe or not, to just pray. So come on, the implication is definitely there. Okay. I'm not going to repeat things that I said already. They're repeated multiple times in the complaint. That's kind of the way it has to go in legal complaints. You have these multiple counts, and sometimes you have to re-allege the facts that support that count, but they are the same facts that support another account. Oh, I see a new comment. Yes, I agree with this, Kitty. I think you're a new watcher. Welcome. I switch off to anyone who spews nonsense. Like Earth is flat. Yep. Brigitte is a man. Like, who cares if she's a man? I know. I'm more concerned about that age difference thing, and I think most people are. Candace Owens is dumbass. She is the new Alex Jones. That is for sure. And then, towards the end of episode 2, she turned her gaze towards President Macron to begin seeding her eventual claim that he's a product of MK Ultra or a similar government mind control. Then she introduced her false claims that the Macrons are committing incest. The Macrons explicitly told her they were not blood relatives in the December retraction demand. And then it says in episode 3, she displayed the side-by-side photo of President Macron and Brigitte Macron's nephew, telling her audience these two people who are not supposed to be in any way related look way too much alike. It was a clear and calculated attempt to convince viewers that the Macrons are blood relatives and that they committed incest. We already said that. And then it says she alleged that President Macron was subjected to isolation as a child to become a Manchurian candidate. Like, these words that are coming out of my mouth, I never thought I'd ever be reading in a legal pleading. And claimed the program included sexual perversion, such as assault, to impact somebody's psyche. Not stopping there, she went after President Macron's parents, implying that their professions were suspicious and asserting without evidence, we know for a fact that psychiatrists have done some evil things. I think they overstated their case here. Everybody of all professions has done some evil things. Psychiatrists have done some evil things. Lobotomies, anyone? But to make that blanket statement and somehow use that to smear President Macron's parents, that's the problem. Of course, psychiatrists have done evil things. I'm sure there have been some nuns that have done evil things. Like, people do evil things. And then she says, there's an Epstein connection in this story. We just haven't gotten to it yet. Now, she brought in President Macron's mother into her fabricated narrative by focusing on her professional work with intersex individuals. Owens twisted Dr. I'm never going to pronounce the last name properly, role, providing medical care and support to intersex patients in France, into supposed proof that the Macron family was well versed in identity transformation and therefore part of a coordinated effort to conceal Ms. Macron's biological sex. This leap is illogical and baseless. There is no connection between, can't pronounce the name, work, and her daughter-in-law's identity, and Owens ignored the fundamental distinction between being intersex and being transgender. Owens intentionally released episode 4 on Jean Michel's birthday, saying, "Happy birthday, Brigitte." Okay, that's just unnecessary cruelty. Sometimes you do have to expose unpleasant things. There are unpleasant things that I've been recently exposing in the Libertarian Party. Nothing to do with people having incest or being secretly transgender or part of MK Ultra or satanic rings or anything like that, but still things that me as a Libertarian Party member and an ex-member of the Libertarian National Committee, and I had to resign due to some of these ugly things, it brings me no joy to expose them. And I do some mockery, particularly with the embezzlement, because the embezzlement is pretty bad. So there is a nickname of Embezzabelle, and some people may think that that's a little bit cruel. It's more jokey. But releasing something on your who, if she's wrong, is her brother's birthday, singing Happy Birthday, Brigitte. Now, also, think of the implications here. I'm somewhat surprised that Jean Michel isn't part. Now, maybe he's going to file, or maybe he just doesn't want to get onto the world stage this way. But what I think would be a real good defamation case is Jean Michel. He's not, I'm sure I'm mispronouncing his name. He's not a public figure. And in order for Candace's story to be true, he would be part of this fraud and identity theft and conspiracy against France's public interest. If Candace gets away with this, it is going to be because of the whole issue of the shifting burden of proof with media and the fact that, like, to call Brigitte and Emmanuel Macron public figures is almost an understatement. You know, I'm a public figure. I'm not the freaking president of a whole ass country. You know, like they're like mega public figures, and that's gonna weigh in Candace's favor. But Jean Michel isn't. Seems to me that would be an interesting lawsuit. And here's something that Candace said. There's no question upon seeing this technology, I'm just checking out something on my screen here, okay, that Jean-Michel Tragno is Brigitte Macron. The only question I have is what happened to his sister, Brigitte Macron. So the implications there are dark. She promised viewers more evidence about what happened to the real Brigitte, but it never came. Displaying her true motive, Owens justified a request for donations with claims that she is risking her safety to protect children from predatory people like the Macrons. And then, Emmanuel Macron was specially selected and groomed to be the leader of France so that an unknown secret group of elites could control him. She framed his entire biography as part of a global operation steeped in perversion and pedophilia and grooming. Okay, and this is also, to me, cruel. This is a Twitter post. I'm sure, all the edgelords will love it, but this is unnecessary. So, it's a picture of Brigitte, and Jean Michel is a younger person. The top part says, the girl you like, and the bottom says, also the girl you like. Okay. Owens dismissed the 2021 Daily Mail article debunking, saying that she did not need to understand the theory about Mrs. Macron's biological sex. She could just see that Mrs. Macron was Jean Michel. And you want to know something? She does this with a lot of things. There was a show I watched the other day, which highlighted Candace, who doesn't believe in dinosaurs. She said dinosaurs are fake and gay. That's what she said. And asked for proof. Well, I could just see that. Embarrassing. Embarrassing. Embarrassing that she's doing this in the name of Christianity. Okay. So, yeah, don't want to repeat things again. This is very, very repetitive. And then she says, speaking to Emmanuel through her show, we know you were created. You aren't real. You have no thoughts of your own. You are the Manchurian candidate and you have absolutely no power. There was also apparently July retraction demands and February retraction demands. that explicitly state Mrs. Macron has always been a woman. She is not President Macron's blood relative, and President Macron was not involved in a mind control program. She keeps saying on her show that they never directly denied her claims, and that is a direct denial. So let's see here. And they're claiming the political bias is circumstantial evidence of Owens' actual malice, especially where she has read and ignored reliable sources debunking these, that she's openly demonstrated her ill will and retaliatory intent, further evidencing actual malice. Now, they're going to get into, and I think this is going to go towards the damages section, because, like, say someone like me, like, I don't know, like right now I've got 136 people watching this between Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch. Small channel. Like, if I said stuff like this, like, I mean, you could still be sued for defamation, don't get me wrong, but it's not that big of a deal. As big of a deal, let's put it that way. Hey, Starfield. They go through all the big shows that she's gone on and how she bragged that this is a worldwide sensation. It's making a worldwide splash, which just goes to show damages, because it isn't like just one friend whispering something over the garden fence to another person. I mean, she's been on Piers Morgan, she's been on Tucker Carlson, she's been on Joe Rogan. I mean, it gets wild. And it says she was financially motivated to create a scandal. Now, whether or not you believe she created a scandal, she certainly has profited off of this. And she was selling shirts with pictures of Brigitte on it that said Man of the Year. I'm sorry, that's unnecessarily cruel as well. And every episode, they say she asked for donations because she was demonetized by YouTube for a while. She's now monetized again, but she definitely was monetizing the drama. So she would have a financial motive, even if she wasn't sure this was true. Now, I don't have a problem with people monetizing. This is a good time for me to go. Look, if you're enjoying this deep dive, throw me a super chat, because this show, I'm hitting monetization no on YouTube, because I openly use the word pedophilia and go, instead of going PDF file, you know, all the things that people do to get around YouTube's controversial. I just don't like playing those games usually. So, you know, I spent a lot of time on this. If you're enjoying it, if you enjoy the legal deep dives that I do, I would really appreciate super chats or super thanks after the fact, or become a patron. Patreon.com/Pink Flame of Liberty. Okay, so it goes on here, talking about the global audience, and there's been multiple times it's been repeated. She eventually refuted it, that the Macrons tried to bribe her to shut her up. That's not true. She did eventually retract that, but she let that go on a little while. So the first time, I think this was on Joe Rogan. Yes. Owens did not refute the false claim that the Macrons tried to bribe her. Instead, she said, he is not lying. There is so much that's happening in France right now that I said we're going to have to do Becoming Brigitte Season 2. And then she said, on, I don't know which show this is. Oh, Your Mom's House. Apparently it's some famous comedians. And they summed up Owen's overarching theory that it's not just that this woman is a man. The implications for this being if this is really a man who transitioned to a woman, is because having a relationship with a 14-year-old boy is completely inappropriate, illegal, and wrong. They deny that they had some kind of, that the age difference is still completely inappropriate and wrong. Secondly, in the government, They're protecting pedophiles because she believes this is a pedophile culture and they're protecting pedophiles with links to the Rothschild family. Brigitte Macron is actually a Rothschild. That's a new one, which is like the biggest banking company in France, I know, and they're protecting each other's interests. There's incest, there's all kinds of gross things, satanic cults. Now, this is somebody paraphrasing Owens, but that's what it was. Owens claimed that 1000% Mrs. Macron was born a man, lived as a man. Okay. When asked if she was concerned about being sued, she says, I welcome the lawsuit. I've only presented the facts. Okay. And we're going to... Owens responded 100% when asked if Mrs. Macron had a penis. At the heart of the Macron thing, there's an entire pedophile nebula that's around him. And then Owens again lied that the Macrons never provided her with evidence that her claims were false. She said in order to reach that actual malice standard, you have to show that we acted in reckless disregard for the truth. You refused to say the truth. And it was just this pompous 100-page, we don't have to answer whether or not Brigitte is a woman or a man. As Owens knew, the December retraction demand did, in fact, deny and disprove that Mrs. Macron was a man. Okay. It just... And then she says he was groomed by Brigitte. Well, that age gap is gross. I'm not even, on that part. Yeah. Yes. Okay. Then they get into breaking down episode by episode. So they got a defamation count for episode 1. And they're actually asking for punitive damages as well. And then false light count, episode 1. So they go through the episodes and they do the various counts for these episodes. Defamation by implication. And then just regular defamation. False light. And then it's just going on with the rest of the episode. So we're going to go towards the end of this complaint. Again, it's 219 pages. And in her X post, Twitter, excuse me, for the epilogue of the series, she made, endorsed, and adopted the following statement. Is Brigitte Macron President Macron's father? What happened to the real Brigitte? These statements are categorically and demonstrably false. President and Mrs. Macron have never lied about their identities, committed incest, or abused state power to cover up such lies. So if she was looking for outright denials, you got it right here. So we're at the end here. And they get into the actual malice, which was dealt with before. But to go to the conclusory statements. As a direct and proximate result of defendant's false implications, President and Mrs. Macron have suffered substantial economic damages, including, among other things, loss of future business opportunities and other such compounding and growing losses as will be shown at trial. That is typical to say in a complaint. You don't name the dollar amounts or even the circumstances with specificity. You just claim that they've happened. That will be proved or not proved at trial and during discovery. As a direct and proximate result of defendant's false implications, President and Mrs. Macron have suffered substantial reputational damage and have had to spend considerable sums of money to correct the public record about their actions and mitigate the reputational harm they have suffered, including costs hiring legal counsel to clear their name in the court of public opinion. Defendants published the implications maliciously, willfully, and wantonly, with common law malice, with actual malice, with a conscious, reckless, and willful indifference to President and Mrs. Macron's rights, and with a desire to cause injury to President and Mrs. Macron. Accordingly, punitive damages are appropriate. In light of all of the foregoing, President and Mrs. Macron are entitled to actual, presumed, and punitive damages in an amount specifically to be specifically determined at trial. Wherefore, plaintiffs respectfully request that the court enter judgment in plaintiffs' favor and against defendants jointly and severally as follows: awarding the Macrons actual and presumed damages to be specifically determined at trial, awarding the Macrons punitive and/or exemplary damages. Next, awarding the Macrons all costs, disbursements, fees, and interest as authorized by law. And this is a catch-all that's in every lawsuit, such other and additional remedies as the court may deem just and proper. A jury trial is demanded. These are, there's of counsel who's in Alexandria, Virginia, and that firm is Clear Lock LLP. But the Delaware attorneys is Brian, and I think, oh my God, I wonder if I found, I'm going to tell you something that I told people. I'm like, this complaint costs a lot of money. It's not just because attorneys charge a lot of money and it's long. It's because I read the whole thing and did not find one typo. I work in law, and I can tell you, there are always typos, no matter how many times you read it. But you don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. But I think I just found a typo, and it's in the attorney's name. What an embarrassing place to have a typo. But maybe his name is just spelled weird. But it's Brian E. Farnham, and it looks like Michael J. Farnham. But Michael, if that, again, this might not be a typo, we're going to look it up, is spelled Michael. It looks like they reversed the C and the H. So we're going to do a, it's Farnham Law is the firm. FarnhamLaw.com. So let's see if it has the attorneys' names on there. Well, attorneys. Joseph, Sue. They misspelled his name. Typo in the 219-page complaint. Michael, you misspelled your name. Well, I hope I'm not getting some paralegal in trouble here. Come on now, I deserve a super chat for that. For going through 219 pages and finding, at least so far, the one typo, and it's in the attorney's names. Candace, you deserve it. I mean, not Candace. The President and Mrs. Macron, you deserve a discount for that. You write off part of the bill for that, because that is embarrassing. Okay, this is weird. I don't know if you guys can still hear me now. Oh, I'm saying this is weird. This is an old-fashioned desk, and I got this like pull-out thing. And this happened when I was doing that last show with Jake Porter. I like to pound. I'm very demonstrative. And every time I pound right here on this, I freeze. It freezes my computer. It did it 2 times in that Jake Porter show, if you were watching that. All right, everyone. I hope that was informative. You're not going to get an hour and 36 on this, probably reading through the complaint, but I like to go to the source material. I will continue to follow this case and give you updates, as I can. So I do hope you found it interesting. Now you know where to go for the minutia on this. I'm putting my weaponized autism to a good use. The next show you might be interested in is on Tuesday. I have Brittany Cousin from Pennsylvania coming on as a guest. Speaking of LP Dirty Laundry, we are going to talk about the harassment problem that existed on the current LNC and what was tolerated by the current national chair, which he should apologize for or resign. And I will maintain that position. This is absolutely unacceptable. If you were going to go after Hannah Goodman, which you did in Colorado rightly for showing her ass to the public and having a Denver Post article written about it, the fact that you allowed rank harassment and had an article written in Pennsylvania about it, no unequal weights and measures. If you're going to hold Hannah Goodman to that standard, you need to hold yourself to that standard. There should be no place in Libertarian Party leadership for that. So Brittany and I are going to discuss that. The reason why it's Brittany is a party member who experienced it from an LNC member and then saw Steve's reaction. And I experienced it both, as an LNC member. So we're going to talk about that on Tuesday. There probably will be an after show on that too, which will be for patrons, so you can get ahead of that by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Pink Flame of Liberty. There are 2 after shows there with Jake Porter, which are definitely worth the price of admission. Okay, that's it, everyone. And I'm making sure I'm on my closing scene here. I hope you have a nice evening. Pretty much evening, unless you're overseas. Then, I don't know. I'm not a flat earther, but sometimes time zones just really throw me for a loop. And don't be a salty bitch. All right, bye-bye.
You gotta take what you're given, that's how we live it. Don't be mad at the system, it's simply how we've existed. I hear a lot of people talking like they politicians and choose to be an accountant because it's safe in a business, not because they want to